Hello, I'm Lowell, he, him, and welcome to another episode of the Open Hearth Podcast. I mention my pronouns because it has served as a useful a-hole filter, as evidenced today by comments on my YouTube videos. This show draws on the experience and play of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. We're an online RPG group that has a bunch of different kinds of games and gaming. We do story games, there's some OSR, people kind of doing guided solo together, lots of different things. And as usual, we've brought on a pair of community members here to discuss the recent gaming and to drill down on a recent RPG they've read, watched, or played. So I have with me Dominik.
Hi, I'm Dominik, he, him.
And Donogh.
Hi, my name is Donogh. My pronouns are he, him.
Okay. So we do two segments. In this first segment, we go around, have people tell us about recent games, and then one game they want to talk about more in detail. So Dominik, how has your gaming been going?
I've done something that is not done on the hearth, that is frowned upon on the hearth. No, it's not. But it's not in that usually we tend to play shorter games, like monthlies, maybe for 3 months, maybe just once shots. And I went ahead and just I have been doing 2 games that I said are full runs. That is, I play them until they're done, the Between and the Apocalypse Keys on Saturdays and Sundays, and that is giving me a lot of joy. Part of that is that through the Open Hearth calendar, I can cycle in players. Like, I'm happy to play that for 2 years. I don't expect all my players to do that. And if my players have to bow out, then it's going on the calendar and I'll get new players. And recently I was able to fill a slot on my Apocalypse Keys game after it has been empty for, 3-4 months, because it's 10 in the morning in Europe, and that's not a great time for Americans, obviously. I've been playing Red Borg, which was nice because that was a cooperation with sounds so official, but with it started as a talk on the Black Armada Discord, and then I had one player from the Black Armada, one player from the Open Hearth, and it was a nice little joint venture between the two of them. And the same is happening with the Slug Blaster game, and I just like being able to pull the communities together because we are just way too fractured.
Yeah.
And further mentions: Girls of Genziana Hotel, Good Society, both with Dana, Raccoon Sky Pirates, Triangle Agency, Public Access, Ecomorpho, Stealing the Throne, For the Queen. All amazing games.
Oh, great diversity. Holy cow.
The 2 long ones are always where my heart sits. That makes me sing every weekend.
Awesome. And what do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about Paint the Town Red, a game I'm not playing currently. I played 1 4-session run, and it was really good. But it is, I think, a really good game, worthy of playing, and particularly worthy of playing if you are a new GM and you may be a bit unsure about how to do that, because it's really good at taking new GMs by the hand.
Awesome. So tell us about it.
It is a game about... Also, maybe I should start with who it is made by. And it's made by Soul Muppet. And Soul Muppet is a publisher who has a very distinct house style, and that could be summarized with said XX fight capitalism. And for XX, you can enter grave robbers, that is D&D-like adventurers for Best Left Buried. You could enter space cowboys for Orbital Blues. You could enter demon hunters for Mad as Hell, or in this case, vampires for Paint the Town Red. And where vampires in like other vampire games I know usually tend to be very, that's not good to say, sad and pathetic, because they can be sad and pathetic in Paint the Town Red as well. That is kind of the point, that it's a metaphor for depression a lot in this game, and for this impotent rage against a unjust, very conservative society. And the thing I find remarkable about it, and that I want to talk about today, is the way it deals with prep. Because half of the game is leading the GM through the process of prepping a city. And you play cities, and you play them for 4 sessions about. And it is clear from the beginning that everything will escalate. And you will step on toes. And in the end, the powers that be will kick you out of the city, and you will play what's called the doldrums, where the designer actually suggests you could play 1,000-year-old vampire, to do that. And then you go to a new city and it all starts over again. And the game leads you through what you need to do it, like what random tables you should create, what characters you should create, what factions, how many. And if you've done all of that, then as a GM, you just start and you basically roll dice. And the game tells you at every step of the way, hey, now one of your guys like flatlined, which is not quite dying, but close to. Now you roll this table. And then as a result, this happens. And then you look at that table. So you, as a GM, you always, while the game is going, it always tells you what you need to do. And I have never seen that in another game just like that. Like where if you're the kind of GM who has trouble being super good at improvising on the spot at the table, then this game is good for you because it tells you what to do. And also it needs very proactive players. That is the other thing, maybe. It is on, like, these games are always on the like link between NSR and story games. So they are quite strongly mechanically scaffolded, but also they're very narrative and they're very narrative first. And if you have a group that does not want to kick against the pricks and doesn't want to start shit, then it is really like pulling teeth. I've had that once. That was not fun. But if you have players who are proactive and you as a GM are maybe new at GMing, it's a great game to start. And I'm thinking, particularly at the Hearth, that is a not unrealistic situation where we have like lots of very engaged, good, active players. And I know we also have a few members who maybe haven't GM'd that much. And yeah, and that's great. And I could say a lot more about that game. It has really, really lovely, nice details everywhere. But I just wanted to point it out for its great prepping section.
Awesome. Donogh, have you played this? Do you know this?
I have not played this. It's on my list. I suspect I will swing by the Soul Muppet stand at UK Games Expo in a couple of weeks to see if they have any copies lying around because it sounds really fascinating. And I'm glad you mentioned this overlap between, OSR, NSR, and story games because that's exactly the observation I've had before about Soul Muppet games. It's a really good cocktail, if I can go that way. You said, Dominic, flatlining, not quite death. I'm really interested in this because it's, an interesting part of a lot of vampire games, this spending your blood or being in torpor or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, we know what one of the things that you have to deal with as a designer, I think, if you want to foster a culture in your game where players are proactive and they are not afraid to do things, is that you have to make sure that they're not just randomly dying because of a bad dice roll, right? Our story games that we're playing usually solve that by death being totally in the hand of the player most of the time or always. And this game has a state that's called flatlining. Like if everything goes wrong, you are all but dead. But to really get killed, you need to get in contact with what's called a bane. And the table rolls them like collaboratively in session 0. And these are like 3 things in this city that can kill people. And it can be stuff like, I'll just quickly look it up because the table is amazing. Because it starts with standard stuff like, stake to the heart, sunlight. And like one player rolls a d6 for the standard things, another one rolls a d20 for less standard things. And then the third one rolls a d100, and that's where it gets wild. For example, the number 58 is heaping rice around their house. And then now in my mind, I'm wondering, okay, what is that for? What kind of society is that where everybody knows you die when somebody heaps rice around your house? So that means that probably like everybody is like frowning upon vampires hoarding rice. What do they want with that, right? Or chopping off their head and stuffing their mouth with garlic. Chopping off the head is not what kills you. Having your mouth stuffed with garlic is also not what kills you. Both of them. And you have like these little bits of like setting that are implicit in these banes. Because these are the things that the vampires in the city are really, really, really afraid of. And that alone is just a lovely, lovely little mechanic. And this is the 100 table, so it's different for every city.
Wow. You mentioned in the notes that there's a set of prep that the game walks you through before you even get to the table as the GM. Can you talk about what that's like?
Yeah, so basically the way it is organized is that in the end you have a set of tables. You have your factions, and factions are, I think, 6 groups that are, or 4 maybe, it's been a while, 4 or 6 groups that represent the powers that be. Then you have, I think, 24 contacts who are just random NPCs you can meet. They can become your friends, but they can also become your enemies, depending on what you do and how the dice shake out. And then you have these Banes that I just talked about. Well, you do that with your group, but still. And once you have all these tables, then the way it works is you have 2 resources. You have Pulse and Chaos. Pulse is your life force, but also how able you are to connect to people, to humans. And Chaos is how feral you become, but also how much damage you do to the society around you. And at the end of each session, the player with the highest Chaos is being pushed back against by the powers that be.
Oh, wow.
And for every 2 Chaos they have, you roll a d8 on a list of consequences. And those consequences could be a friendly NPC becomes unfriendly. An unfriendly NPC becomes hostile. A faction goes and does a move against you. And then every faction has basically GM moves. Stuff that you think about before the game. It's like 6 things that they can do to fuck with the players. So in the moment that it becomes relevant, where you roll, oh, okay, they're doing a move, you just have to pick your list that you made beforehand. And you're not sitting there in the middle of the game thinking, what are they going to do now? Because you already know what they do, because you already wrote your list, and you don't think, okay, who could I introduce now? Because you roll on the table for that.
Ah, that sounds great. This is really interesting. I kind of vaguely knew the premise, but this sounds very cool. Thank you for telling us about this.
Thanks for listening to my rambling.
No. Donogh, I'd like to come to you. Donogh is legendary for the sheer number of games that he plays. So I'm going to ask with some reservation, Donogh, what have you been playing recently?
So yeah, I'll put this in the notes. Like since March, I'll restrain myself. Defy the Gods, a great series that Alex was running for us. Something is Wrong Here, Last Shooting, Dragon Reactor, and Ghost Squadron. All 3 of those games as part of Mega March. 2 Hearts with One Face, Hunters Inc., and something Tookish like the Hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
And then since April, middle of the century, which I think you'll talk about later, Lowell, Girls of the Georgiana Hotel, The Emperor is Undead, The Last Caravan, which I'll talk about later, Free from the Yoke, which I've been playing in the Great Pendragon campaign, Red Carnations on a Black Grave, Fiasco, The Things She Carried, Exquisite Biome, Fimbria, Tales of the Valiant, Primed Hostile, Good Society, 2nd edition, Outgunned, and Genia's Wonder Tales.
Wow.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah. So you're going to talk about Last Caravan?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So yeah, I am back to talk about another Forged in the Dark game this time, with quite a lot of rules drift again. The Last Caravan is by Ted Bushman. It focuses on a found family road trip across the US in the middle of a deep winter and in the middle of an alien invasion. I forgot to mention that one, right? So a really interesting setting, very specific, obviously. I picked it up on crowdfunding and I just read it on a road trip of my own about this time last year. And, I spent the entire trip there and back reading it. I was really taken by it. The vibe, the specific changes that they made to Force in the Dark, and the setting itself, just amazing. I mean, I found the writing, the background, all these little bits of lore packed into the writing really, really emotive. Not just the human stories, but also the alien stories that you figure out after a while. And, sometimes you're excited about a crowdfunding book, you get it, and it doesn't quite live up to your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
This is one where I went, okay, when is the next date I could possibly run this on?
Oh, wow.
straight to the top of the queue, which is pretty rare. And in terms of maybe this ties into Dominik's scheduling, I scheduled it for eight weeks between some cancellations and just the pace that we played on. That was not enough. So I put it on again. And so actually tonight we have our penultimate episode.
How many have you had?
So it'll be 15 sessions total.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
And, as I've come to kind of settle into Forged in the Dark, it is very much in that, like, one session for, I won't say heist, doing the thing, and one session for downtime. That I kind of now treat as my baseline for Forged in the Dark.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of other things to talk about. One is that gameplay loop is quite relaxed. It's not a heist and downtime. Downtime is kind of reframed as travel. And this is where you can still have like little role-playing engagements with people you meet on the road or inside your own little car, but you are trying to get the supplies that will get you to the next region. That's fuel for the car, supply to feed you, all that kind of stuff. And then you have a detour phase where you do the kind of big things. You go to meet someone, or you go to find something, or you have to fight off something. But it's even looser than that in practice, because in some regions you have to do like more than one detour, right? You may have more than one big thing to do in a region before you can exit. And it is really interesting in that, you start to get the sense that this is a long journey, right? You might take, present day with multiple drivers. You could probably, I don't know, drive across the country in a couple of days if you push it, right? This is, the whole winter to cross the country. I guess maybe if I start a little bit further back and talk about like creating characters, creating your group, it's a good place, because one of the great things that happens is that you create memories from before you started your road trip, before you start play, like one good and one bad associated with each other character. And you kind of get this idea of this prologue, right? You build up a picture of what this group was like before you decided to make this very dangerous road trip. You also have like a spot, you have a sheet in the physical game to keep track of your car. It's not really a crew sheet like you might see in many Forged in the Dark games, but it is quite a focus. There are pros and cons that you just roll on randomly, and it's a real challenge to keep it on the road. It takes wear and tear. You have little projects to make it better. If you're installing a CD player that you found in some wrecked Jeep on the way. And also some of the playbooks have abilities that are specifically tailored to make the car better, to make it behave better in certain circumstances. So it's definitely a focus. I mean, one of the things that you can do is like anytime you find a car on the road, you can examine it and see how badly, like, does it have a lot of pros? Does it have a lot of cons? Is it worth trading it in for your old car for a newer model? The group I'm with have named their car, and they have just abandoned it at Region 6. So it's definitely always on the table, and that's a really interesting choice to get something new. The imprints, which is what the game calls playbooks. Some of the really familiar ones here, like the hunter type, the scientist, the talker, the bruiser, all of these very, very normal archetypes are here. But there's also the innocent, who is like, young or inexperienced, and they can flip their character kind of halfway through the trip, depending on how things are going. They can become jaded or powerful in a different way. And of course, the dog, the good boy playbook. I will lead by saying that when the dog gets into trouble, they take fear and not harm. So, like, if that track fills up, they just run away. You play another character. So the dog does not die. And yeah, characters have inadequacies, which is it's not quite filling exactly the same space as a vice, but it's the way your character makes their lives worse.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're afraid or if you have grief or whatever it is, when you make a decision that is non-optimal, you get heroism, which is you're kind of like your stress mechanic, how you get extra dice.
Mm.
And then what else is worth talking about in terms of imprints? Yeah, the equipment lists are quite flavorful as well. Sometimes literally, some characters have access to, spice mixes or candy or something to make the road trip a little bit easier. The other thing that's interesting, right, is that some of these pieces of equipment are useful in certain phases. So, if you are making tea or if you're using painkillers, those are slower acting things to heal damage or whatever than, using your sledgehammer to beat open an alien tank.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think it really leads to some interesting play, these inadequacies, especially because, players love to get extra heroism to make that next roll easier, and therefore we are living out the consequences of people's inadequacies for longer and longer as we journey.
Dana, you talked about the travel phase being the downtime, and I'm curious. We live in a post-Slug Blaster world. Like, how is that? How story created in the downtime in the travel phase, and how do the mechanics support that? Is it just like random tables like in Blades in the Dark, or is it like full-fledged story prompts like in Slug Blaster?
So there's no random tables, there's no real story prompts. It's so when the group are looking for supplies, right? That's probably the most frequent thing they do in terms of those travel actions. And it's I just asked them really questions like, what are you looking for? Where are you looking for? How are you trying to hunt this down? And sometimes that is quite mechanical. Maybe there's a gas station. Maybe we can drop by there. But sometimes, depending on how well they roll or how noisy they've been, it's a good opportunity to bring in some NPCs who are kind of each region has a list of NPCs, a list of factions who are active, and you can just use it as an opportunity to drip some stuff in. But really, what most happens is that people go off by themselves or with other people, and you've got a chance to just for them to talk while scrounging for supplies. So it really depends what kind of speed you're playing at or what you think the group wants. Do they want a heart-to-heart moment? Do they want some action as they're scrounging? So yeah, it's definitely something you'll probably have to improvise a little bit on. You could plan these things out. You might have an idea for a faction that they'll run into or a person they'll run into. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting setup.
What is the end game? Like, I know with Blades, you want to get your stash. It feels like there is a more definite end game. What does that look like?
There is and there isn't. I will
Okay.
infuriate people with my response. So there is in the campaign, you're going westwards. There are some major factions who are going to come to a head in the world. And if your group kind of hooks into those on a love-hate kind of relationship side, then maybe they will aim towards, being in San Francisco for a final showdown between those two, right? And the game has some ideas for which of those factions you're going to end up aligned with. There's maybe 3 or 4 that are really in there. And the game does have some hooks for that. But maybe your group just wants to, as a group at least, just wants to get to the other side. Like in our current campaign, one of the characters who is the kind of, I would say, baby of the group, but the youngest of the group, the rest of the party are trying to get them home. So it's a Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon kind of road trip. And, I guess I don't know what's going to happen tonight when I play this penultimate session. But when we get to that character's home, maybe that is the culminating, the climax, the emotional high of this campaign. And maybe that final confrontation between those two factions is just a coda. It's just going to be, hey, let's see what happens after this. I can imagine playing with a different group and going a completely different route, hitting completely different factions and having a completely different outcome. Maybe that's next year's plan.
Huh.
When the expansions hit my door next year or later on this year, yeah, I can imagine playing this again and saying, let's start in Florida and go west from that direction.
Wow, that sounds
That
great.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll be really curious to see what you think of the expansions, because I know that the Kickstarter or crowdfunding for that did pretty well. So,
Yeah, those expansions have extra stuff like a possibility of alien characters, a possibility of an old dog group. So all good boys all the way westwards. So yeah, I don't know how that'll play out, but looking forward to it. Yeah.
the All Dogs group would very much be in Dan Brown's wheelhouse. He ran some games that were all dogs. So I'm going to go. So I'll talk about my recent gaming. So we've done just kind of the session 0 setup of a Daggerheart game. I did a one shot of Tachyon Squadron for our Star Wars Day. Face to face, I've been doing my action cards Shadowrun hack. I've been running Star Trek Adventures, second edition, and then been playing a few sessions of Mongoose Traveler second edition, also reskinned for Star Wars. And then for Game Facilitator Camp, I know I did Raccoon Sky Pirate, Stealing the Throne, and For the Queen. I know there was another one, but I've forgotten some of the stuff. Things have blended in for me. But the thing that was run for me that I got to play that I really want to talk about is Midnight of the Century. Donna ran this. Donna was nice enough to offer, hey, do you want to play something? So this is an OSR adjacent, I want to say that, love letter to the Millennium TV show. And as importantly to serial killer thriller movies from the 1990s. A little bit from the 80s, a little bit 90s, a little bit 2000s, but right in that mode of you don't know what's going to happen. And maybe there's weird psychic shit happening, and maybe it's real, maybe it's not. It's all of that. I love it very much. This comes from Colin Lesueur, who designed Runecairn, which is a Souls-like one-on-one Norse post-apocalyptic fantasy, and We Deal in Lead, which is wasteland gunslingers inspired by the Dark Tower. Both a real delight to read. Like, maybe not games I would necessarily want to play genre-wise, but having read the books, I actually made me want to play them. So I have the full version of Midnight of the Century, and I just downloaded today the scenario PDF that he put out, but I haven't read it. And so I'm going to talk about this as someone who hasn't looked at the actual rules of the game, but has only played it. Donna did the adaptation. You created a really wonderful Google Keeper, and you taught us the rules. And I think you based it primarily on the quick start, right, Donna?
So when I listed it, only the primer was available, but I think in the couple of weeks before we started, the kind of full hardback version came out, and I updated what I had done. So I think we played pretty much the final version.
Okay.
But it could be I missed a few things.
So this is a fairly simple game. We had our choice of 4 archetypes for our characters. I went with the classic profiler, so Will Graham from Hannibal, and Mads, with the other players, is a 2-player and GM game. Went with the occultist, more of a psychic, and the touchstone for me is Alison Dubois from the TV show Medium. And there's also a journalist archetype and a damned archetype, which has some more funky, high supernatural stuff to it. Each archetype gives you some different pick lists, some different questions for your background. And then the other big difference is they each get 2 specialist skills. These are big things that they can do. Like I, as a profiler, can see through the eyes of the killer in a flash, or I can build a profile of the killer. These are specialist things. You have 3 stats that are rolled: body, mind, and will, and rolled in the old school way. So as I discovered, you could get a very bad character. Like I had to be very cautious. I had to drive my character very cautiously given what my will track was, because all of those stats are your damage tracks, but then the will track is a little more important. So we've just got those 3 stats, and then you've got 6 skills, And 5 of those are actually rolled. They're attached to a stat. It's a roll under a d20. And then the last one is investigate, which is kind of takes the gumshoe approach, where you go to investigate. When you go to look, you get the key elements from the scene. And then if you want to push down, if you want to open that up further, you make rolls on skills or specialist skills to deepen that info. I love it. Like, I love being able to say, I want to ask about this, and then I get information, and then maybe there's some stuff that I have to do rolls for, but I'm getting the pieces. The big thing that's happening, though, is there is a clock on the investigation. It's a little bit like Monster of the Week, but I actually like this better because I can, it's an easier visualization for me in terms of what it's doing. So it's kind of calls it the doom phase. And there are 4 segments. You start at dawn, then day, then dusk, and then midnight. And the GM moves that forward as things go along. Like, there's a point at which we move from, the intro of the story to day, and things get a little bit worse. And how it gets worse is very simple mechanically, but very effective. Basically, as it goes along, there is a higher cost for missing rolls, because when you miss a roll, you're going to lose some will, and for using your specialist skills, because your specialist skills can cost will to use. So that gets more expensive as it gets later. And there are some other wrinkles to this, like there's some bonds that you can do. There's a downtime that you can take to go and meet with your bonds or with your connections to recover. But again, that is taking time away from the investigation. So it's a really kind of a hard choice. There's also things like conditions and stuff. Good, simple, investigative approach really keeps the tension ratcheted really well. It is very much a straight investigation game. The scenario has clues, it has scenes, it has what you can find there. You follow them. This is so my jam. I love this. This is something I've run quite a bit. Like, I love Brindlewood Bay. I love Apocalypse Keys. I love, Nameless Secrets. All of these ones that you're getting clues and then you're building at the end. But I also really love, here's an investigation. Let's go investigate. Let's try and play it as seriously as we can. We get the pieces and we're trying to put it together. And I so rarely get a chance to play in these kinds of games. Very, very rarely. So this was an absolute delight. I also love that the game makes it clear, as the GM made clear to us repeatedly early on, that facing down the killer unprepared is going to get you killed. And even if you are prepared, when we get to that end phase, that outcome is uncertain. There are certain bonuses to the roll. There is a resolution roll, but you can also just make horrible mistakes, as I did. In the final scene, I went to kind of look in through the window of the killer's cabin to see what he was doing. And that is the point at which I rolled a 20. And the killer literally leapt out through the front window and stabbed me in the heart. And I rolled and I died.
Ooh.
And it was great. And Mads is suddenly there alone. And she ran for the car and then botched a roll and dropped the car keys, and they went under the car. And then the killer killed her, and actually killed her in a way that kind of echoed a psychic vision that she had in the first session. So we got this pullback, we're both dead. It ends with Donogh describing the scene of like it's now night, and the police cars with their flashing lights are driving up to the cabin and finding our bodies. And it's the end of the movie where the detectives have failed, where they have overlooked something, where they've made a mistake. And it felt so 90s. It felt so in that. It was great. Absolutely caught the vibe of those kinds of movies, like Seven. Thinking of Patient Zero. There are a bunch of these, and of course the Millennium TV show. Part of what made this great for me is I've been on a recent kick watching Italian giallo films that some of them are particularly mystery, some of them are polizia. I can't remember how you say that, but it fits so well in with this, and I really dug it. It's got crunchy mysteries. It's got a simple OSR system. If you like that, for me, it's a high recommend.
That sounds amazing.
Dominick, Donna, I'll throw to you to ask or add comments onto that.
Just a comment that I get that. Like this, there's something very, very nice about these NSR type games, and it's always a bit of a matter of definition, of course. But to me, NSR type games are these games that are on the verging point between OSR and story games.
Yeah.
Like the Soul Muppet oeuvre, like Chris McDowell stuff, and apparently also like that game where you have these random rolls, but they're not. And also sometimes they're quite catastrophic, but they are never frustrating. They're just like prompts, really, and they further the gameplay, not in the way that like a dread game, where you spend an hour like preparing a fight, having the fight, and then you roll a 1, and then it's over, and you've achieved nothing. That is not my experience with these types of games, and that's why I really, really like them.
One of the things is sometimes I felt with OSR games that, I mean older OSR games, that your characters kind of don't matter. Like they are disposable. Yeah. Who they are, what they do, doesn't matter. I really felt like who our characters were, what they were about, we got chances to play out those scenes, did make a difference and feel right in here.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Donna, anything I missed? Anything you want to say? Comment your thoughts on having run it?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Again, a huge fan of Millennium back in the day. So, that was the vibe I was going for above all else. And I mean, I think, like you said, we had some really great character moments, when the occultist and the profiler kind of realize what's going on with each other. It was really good. Like I was reaching for my popcorn as a GM, right? That was great. The other thing that I think really makes it is, the adventure, the mystery, the case dossier, whatever you want to call it, is really well put together.
Oh, okay.
It has some great clues in it, a good sequence to kind of help the GM understand what's going on in the mystery, what's a good route through. And I know we kind of broke that a little bit in the middle, but because of the structure, I had the tools to help you get there, or to help you jumping ahead not break things. And you can, because you have all of this information, it's easy to really kind of extemporize based on what you're doing, what makes sense in this situation. I said to myself a couple of times, and I may have kind of contradicted something else, but I think it worked nonetheless, because it really did present a great overall picture for me.
Awesome. Listeners, for our other segment, we ask everyone to talk about something that they're digging right now and why. So, Dominick, what is giving you life?
What's giving me life is a thing that has been happening in my 2 full run games a lot lately. Or not a lot, but sometimes, and it's always been a nice experience. And that is when my player started to vent. Because I made the observation that if you don't have this strong time limit, you don't feel like you have to get through the game in like your 4 days, 4 sessions. You start chatting, and the longer you play, the more familiar you get with one another, and then people like, and it's not something that I facilitated like in any like conscious way. It's just something that happens, that of the 3 hours of game time we have, sometimes we talk like for 90 minutes, just chat. And that is really lovely. That is really like nourishing. And particularly with all the stuff that's happening, like with ICE running rampant in the US, with people fleeing the country because they don't feel safe anymore, but also with like personal tragedies. It's really good to have this, like for me as the facilitator, to open the space, or not. I'm not opening the space. The players are opening the space because they're listening, and then other players are taking the space. And for me, that feels so trusting, given that we are essentially strangers. Like, we have never met. We only know each other from the hearth. But there is like a certain level of intimacy in these long games now where we can do that. And I find that beautiful, and I hope also helpful for the vendors that they have that space. And I'm always so happy when that happens. And then I look at my recording at the end, of course, cutting out all the stuff. And I end with like 1 hour of recorded game time. And that's fine. That's fine. I love it. And that is giving me life. That feels very wholesome.
I'm so glad to hear that. And Donogh, what is giving you life?
I think this changes day by day, but today, or maybe yesterday more accurately, Games on Demand is kind of giving me life. I'll be helping run games at UK Games Expo in a couple of weeks. Shout out to Lloyd.
Woo-hoo.
And while that is full on, but I will be, as the cliche goes, tired but happy coming back from Birmingham after having run 10 sessions at Games on Demand over the weekend. But just the other day at a board gaming convention, a con director of a different con approached me to say, could we do something Games on Demand like at this convention in Dublin later on in the year? So yeah, we're putting together like a program, or at least a plan of attack, for GailCon in October. I might be bending Lloyd's ear about the best way to do that, given that he also goes to GailCon regularly. So yeah, I just love the model, flexible. It's kind of different everywhere you see it. But, by and large, if I was going to a convention and wasn't running stuff, I would be instantly ending up at Games on Demand, because that is definitely my jam.
Yeah, I loved it's my one regret about us not going to cons anymore is that Sherry and I loved Games on Demand at Origins. It was just so much fun. I'll do my last thing. The giving me life is a little more concrete for me. I got a filament printer.
Nice.
I had some extra dumb fun money a few months ago, so I bought a filament printer, and I was like, I'm going to print terrain for our face-to-face game. I'm going to print a bunch of cyberpunk buildings, and then I kind of have a shelf filled with terrain, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? And I suddenly realized I was looking around, and I realized that I could print inserts for my board games, that I could print organizers for them, that there are free STLs to print them. I love sorting things. Like, I love sorting things, and the ability to make little things, and they all fit in the boxes. Like, people have spent the time in CNC doing all of this and calculating the space and things. So I've put it for 51st State and Empires of the North and Yokohama and a bunch of other ones. And I love it. I love that. I'm hoping it encourages me to play more, but also it is just a joy to get the games all set like that. So they're very much giving me life.
Nice.
Listeners, that is the bulk of our show, but I'm going to ask our guests if there's any place that they can be found on social media or anything they want to throw to. Dominik?
No, I'm only to be found at the Hearth. I'm an exclusive, Open Hearth exclusive, and sometimes on the Black Armada Discord, but mostly here.
I'm so glad that we have some overlap with them. They do such amazing work. I'm really looking forward to that Kickstarter delivering. And actually, I just got Lovecraft-esque a physical copy of that, so
good.
Have to figure that out. And Donogh, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me pretty inactive over on Mastodon. Every so often, I will make a post. More likely and more niche. If you're interested in playing or running game challenges, you'll find me an RPG Geek, Hunting Rich. And if you're looking for weird recommendations on the RPG subreddit, you will find my weird recommendations there.
Awesome. And we'll have some links to some things there. So the Open Hearth Podcast is a production of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. We have an online gaming calendar where folks can sign up for our sessions. If you've enjoyed this show or any of the shows in this feed, Please consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Open Hearth Gaming. That, just giving us $1 a month to support the podcasts that we do would be very nice. That's very pleasant. We have a Discord, as has been mentioned. We are on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and we are on the Dice Camp instance on Mastodon. I'll have links to those in the show notes. And any of this stuff, our community codes, how we run things, links to everything, you can find all of that at openhearthgaming.com. Please consider rating, subscribing, reviewing our show. It does help out. Engagement is important. So please do that. If you have the mental, emotional space to do that, we would appreciate it. Dominic, thank you for coming on.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
And Donogh, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for the invite.
And listeners, that is our show.